want to keep it super simple to start. What is a Jehovah's Witness?
Jehovah's Witnesses claim to be a Christian religion, for one, okay? And so, but their belief system is totally different than most of Christianity as a whole. And in terms of that, what they believe about Jesus Christ is totally different than any other Christian religion that we have today. So how they feel like their belief is that Jesus was the Son of God only, and so he is not deity at all. So kind of a spin-off from your regular Christianity that believes in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, or Holy Ghost. They believe that Jehovah is God and Jesus is his son and the Holy Spirit is God's power.
Whenever you're doing worship or something, they would not worship Jesus in any way. It would only be God.
That's correct.
Okay. So
Jehovah, right? That's what they call God, Jehovah, in that religion, correct?
Yes. Taken from some twisted scriptures, of course, but yeah.
So what would what is the actual purpose of Jesus in the scriptures? Just a messenger almost to come down and spread the word?
This is going to sound crazy, but no, they believe that Jesus came and died for people's sins, much like Christianity does.
Sure.
And which is odd because they give no credence to Jesus being deity in any way. They believe in the sacrifice of Jesus, that we had to have the sacrifice of Jesus for the forgiveness of sins, but they still believe that Jesus was flesh only.
Whenever you do like prayer and stuff, is it very similar to Christianity and all that, or is that a different thing too?
No, it is very similar to Christianity, and because they use Jesus' name when they pray, so it's very the way that Jehovah's Witnesses interact with other people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses, like when they go door to door preaching, they talk a lot about Jesus. Okay. However, if you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, they don't believe in the deity of Christ. Right. So most people don't know that. It's like, well, hey, they talk about Jesus all the time and they believe that Jesus died for our sins. But the big difference between them and Christianity is the fact that they do not believe in the deity of Jesus Christ at all.
In his church structure and everything pretty much the same?
No, it's a little different than the modern day Christianity. So they have 3 meetings a week.
Oh, wow.
So they have a Bible study. They have what they call a theocratic ministry school. That's a meeting usually on Tuesdays or Thursday nights where they are taught how to go door to door and convert people to be Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the main purpose of that, is to educate their members on how to talk to people when they go door to door. And then Sunday is like a regular, pretty much like Christian church. You go and there's a sermon and or what they call a speaker meeting, and yeah, so it's pretty similar on Sundays. Only difference is on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So as growing up as a kid, I was always at a Kingdom Hall. It seemed like so we were there 3 days a week. Plus Saturdays you go from door to door. When I was a kid in the summertime, we had to go door to door. We were required to do that, knocking on people's doors trying to convert them. So that's the main difference between them and Christianity, is they do get out and proselytize, that's for sure.
So does everyone have to do the door-to-door thing, or is that like they handpick people who they think?
No, everyone has to do that. Everyone.
Growing up, was it always feared to go door to door as a child?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So first of all,
because putting your children into situations like that where you don't know who's going to answer the door could be dangerous.
Yes. Yeah, it could be. So my experience as a child was, I grew up I'm older than you all. So I grew up in the 70s, right? 70s and 80s. So what I hated about it was that, see, I couldn't associate with other kids. Okay. I couldn't have friends that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, I went to public school. Okay.
Wow.
And so when they would have birthdays or Christmas parties or Halloween or Valentine's Day, you know, you were ostracized. You had to sit out in the hallway in a desk. They just pulled a desk out in the hallway. You sat there. So everybody, you talk about being bullied,
Right.
picked on, and you're the freak and all that. Then you go door to door, and guess who you get to run into?
Just to kind of get into that a little bit, they've backed off of celebrating a lot of holidays and stuff in school. Do you feel like that is a good thing, just from what you experienced? Or because a lot of people who, like me personally, I don't like it at all, because whenever my kids go to school, it's just a little extra fun day. You can celebrate a holiday, may get, you know, a little away from the point of the holiday, but it's something fun.
So I never got to experience that.
Right.
And so from my perspective, it was devastating as a child not to do things like that. It was devastating not to, even not in school, but even birthday parties of people you know. Like I had, my mom's side of the family are all Jehovah's Witnesses. My dad's side of the family were all Baptists. So I had both, you know, you had a separation there. So I knew all my cousins celebrated birthdays and holidays and things like that. And, you know, as a kid, you're missing out on something. You know, you feel like you're missing out on something because you're in a religion that you're a child, you don't know anything about. Why am I so different?
Right.
So that's what bothered me the most, is that I was always so different. I never felt like I fit anywhere.
Did you make any friends inside that community that you could, that had similar beliefs, that felt like they were forced?
Most of the kids my age felt like they were forced to do these things. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
How did that work with your mom and dad, since she was JW and he was Baptist?
Wow. Oh, I need to ask this one. Give me one. Give me a second.
Good, you're good. I figured that was going to be a crazy amount of strain. Like, how did that even start and all of that?
So I don't know how my mom and dad met. I really don't. But my dad was an alcoholic.
Okay.
So his belief system was that he was a Baptist, but he never went to church. So our home was very volatile, because every time my dad would get plastered, he would blame my mom for him getting plastered because of her religion. So it was a constant battle between the two about religion.
Wow.
You good, man. You good.
My dad was very emotionally, physically, and mentally abusive too. And so just imagine living in a situation like that, plus the fact that you were this freakish Jehovah's Witness. It was tough. It was tough. Now, my dad, to my amazement, my dad got help, stopped drinking when I was like 10 years old.
Heck yeah. Okay.
And I had a wonderful relationship with him until he died in 2003. I had a pretty good relationship with him. But, you know, that's where I guess, you know, the DNA of my father passed on to me the gift of alcoholism and drug addiction. So,
got it.
But yeah, it was a very volatile situation, because not only was my mom and dad, and they were married for like 36 years until my dad passed away.
Wow.
But in those early years when I was growing, when I was growing up, man, they would go at it, But when my dad stopped drinking, things changed dramatically. He made sure she got to go to her meetings. He made sure that she had stuff, to go to the Kingdom Hall. He supported her 100% after that. And I think it was just living amends,
Sure.
My dad had his own personal beliefs.
But he stopped holding her beliefs over her head, kind of. Yeah. And were you so? I feel like that's a really hard dynamic, anyways, because you already have all this. Like you just feel like you aren't a part of normal life in school and everything, and you don't have the friends that you would want, stuff like that. But then also, were you ostracized by people in the church just because you weren't a traditional Jehovah's Witness, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
No.
I was treated differently because my father wasn't a Jehovah's Witness.
Right.
Right. So, yes, very much so.
So when a couple gets married in that religion, the other person does not have to convert?
So my mom and dad got married before my mom was really dedicated to her faith, right?
Okay.
So, if that answers your question,
Right.
yes, they both should be. They talk about. There's some scripture that talks about not being unevenly yoked with another person. So yeah, they expect Jehovah's Witnesses to marry another Jehovah's Witness. But my mom and dad didn't do that. They actually eloped when she was 16 and got married. So
Wow.
she was a little rebel back then, But as I guess as she got older, she got more devoted to the religion. I have a sister too, totally different. I mean, my sister is completely like my mother, 100% sold out Jehovah's Witness. It's crazy to me because I tried to talk to my sister before I left the organization, it's just they're brainwashed, and I didn't realize that until I got out and started doing my own research on the religion.
I'm assuming an idea of what happened because she was so young. She got with your dad. Was he already kind of getting into drinking before, like whenever they were first together? And then did she grow into the Jehovah's Witness religion because of her family, or was it something else involved?
So I am third, fourth generation Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah. My mom was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. She rebelled a little bit in her teenage years, right? Got with my dad. Yes, my dad drank when my mom and dad got married, but not like he did after they got married, apparently.
Okay.
So his full blown alcoholism did not kick in, I guess, until after my sister was born. And so I think the pressure from, having kids and all that caused him to consume more. And then, so their relationship was very volatile because of his drinking and her religion. That's what they fought about when I was a kid. I'll never forget, and it was bad.
Besides just like the religion being an issue, what about like financially contributing to the church? Was that also an issue throughout your household? Because I know a lot of those churches, they rely heavily on their members' financial backing.
We were poor. I mean, we were dirt poor.
Right.
We lived in a mobile home until we actually lived in a mobile home that had no septic system. So
Wow.
one live in a mobile home with no septic system. When I was a kid, we used a 5-gallon bucket to use the restroom.
So on top of all of this, though, it's hard enough just being poor and being a kid because like you're going to school, you have the same clothes on usually that you wear all week, and it's like on top of all of that, you're already ostracized because of your religion. That's it. How I don't even know how to ask it because it's kind of apparent, but how traumatic was this stuff even in your early years? Like, did it mess with you, or was that once you started getting older and understanding the world, it really started affecting you?
No, it really affected me at a very young age. I remember one of the I remember getting in trouble with my mom one time when I was in first grade. I wanted to be part of the Christmas party so bad that I took a toy that I had and I wrapped it and took it to school with me. Okay,
Wow.
and the teacher called my mom, and she came and got me. It was probably the worst ass whooping I have ever had from her.
The teacher ratted you out?
For that.
Wow.
But it was just wanting to belong.
Right.
You know,
Every child wants to belong,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I was the kid who occasionally got knocked across the room by a dad because he's drunk.
Right.
I was the Jehovah's Witness. I was poor. All my clothes were hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, so bullied all through school, all through elementary school and that, which back then we didn't have, there were no bullying rules back in the 70s and 80s.
Wow.
People just kicked the shit out of you.
And kids could be so mean. Kids are the meanest.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was tough. Now, as I got older, my teenage years, that's when I started having, doubts and my own, just my own belief system, because I had, I wasn't supposed to have friends. Oh, wait, I got to back up.
You're
Having
good.
friends that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. Let me talk about that, how traumatizing that is. So my mom would straight up tell me, if you have friends that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, they're all going to die at Armageddon. You're talking about a 5 or 6 year old telling a 5 or 6 year old, 7-year-old that. Like, you don't hang out with them because they're going to die at Armageddon, because Armageddon can come at any time. So you were afraid to have friends because they were going to die, right? But as I got older, in my mind, I called bullshit. And, I had friends when I was in high school, I had friends that were my age. And we talked, and, the great thing about having friends that are your age that you can hang out with, they are all of different religions.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear, it was so enlightening to hear what other people believed and what their belief system was. And, as teenagers, you don't talk about that shit really, right?
Because in your household, it was one way or the highway, and everything was so black and white and strict. To hear that other people live differently was like, what?
Well, and I bet they were curious about you quite a bit.
Right.
Oh, yeah. When I was growing up, it was unheard of to be a Jehovah's Witness.
Huh.
So they want, my friends, of course, wanted to know, what the hell is that? What do y'all do? And I was the same way. What, you're Baptist? What's that mean?
Right.
You're Catholic. What's that mean? And it was, I learned a lot from my friends that I wasn't supposed to have about religion that changed, my perspective on a lot of things, And so I became rebellious in a lot of ways with my mom.
Did you start to notice that if you wanted to live life the way that you want it to live, you kind of had to manipulate your way around certain things?
I became a professional liar and manipulator. And
Same.
the problem with that is it did not just carry over to my childhood and my change from being a Jehovah's Witness to not being a Jehovah's Witness. It carried with me throughout my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, that's one of my character defects that I still work on today, that I still work with my therapist today on, is telling the truth and not manipulating, man. And so I realized at a very young age, I could manipulate my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I'd use that so I wouldn't get in trouble, right? You lie and manipulate so you don't get in trouble. And in my household, if you got in trouble, it was an ass whooping, Okay, it wasn't. My parents didn't believe in grounding. They didn't believe in taking anything away from you. It was corporal punishment at its core, right? And so I learned to, if I did something wrong, to lie about it and manipulate
Right.
it and get my way. And that kind of stayed with me. And when I, later in life, it affected every relationship that I've had up until I got sober. Um, so it was a lasting effect. And still to this day, that's something I work on, but I'm very conscious of it.
What about your search for perfection? Because that growing up in a household that everything was supposed to be a certain way on the outside, I
Mhm.
searched for perfection that was unobtainable.
I felt like God hated me, okay? Because as a Jehovah's Witness, I had to be perfect,
Right.
okay? And I wasn't, and I knew I wasn't. And so you had the disappointment of, I'm displeasing God. God hates me. God doesn't want anything to do with me because I'm not perfect. And even, I will tell you guys this, even up to 2 years ago, I still felt that way. Okay, I had left the witness organization when I was 22 or 23 years old. And so even with my own belief system, when I was an alcoholic and addict for such a long time, I didn't get sober until I was 50 years old. And, we talk about how higher power, and I go to AA, so we talk about how higher power and that. And I still always felt that emptiness, that hole, that I wasn't pleasing to God, that, I didn't like praying because I didn't think God listened to me. And so for the first 2 years of my recovery, I white knuckled. I'm not kidding. It was a white knuckle event because I didn't believe God heard my prayers or gave a shit about me because I wasn't perfect and I couldn't be. And that's what I was taught when I was a kid. I had to be perfect
Right.
for God, right? And I wasn't, and I knew it. And I tell you what, that's where I have a wonderful, awesome sponsor. I'll give him a shout out.
Sure. Yeah.
If you're listening, brother, I'm telling the story. But I have a very patient and understanding sponsor.
When you were younger, and especially whenever you were rebelling and stuff like that, do you feel like this big hole where you felt like God didn't you were letting God down? Do you feel like some of that might have been from your mom? Because especially when you're rebelling, do you think you were letting her down a lot? And it, like, if I'm letting down my mom, then I'm definitely letting down God. Just I could see that causing a lasting thing with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt that every time that I did that. But I think I would get upset at myself because I just didn't. I couldn't believe what my mom believed. Okay, it
Right.
just
Right.
did not make sense to me, and that curmudgeon of I'm displeasing my mother, I'm displeasing God, that my brains can't wrap around all these things that Jehovah's Witnesses believe because they just don't make sense to me.
Right.
It just don't make sense that only Jehovah's Witnesses are gonna enjoy living on a paradise earth. That's what they believe. I can't imagine God killing 8 billion people in the world and just keeping, a few Jehovah's Witnesses, right? It just didn't make sense to me. And so that was a constant dilemma in my brain. And luckily, I had cousins that were Jehovah's Witnesses too. And one in particular, my cousin Richie, we were the same age and we went to the same school. We were in the same grade all the time. I think I was 6 months older than him, 5 or 6 months older than him. And so we were always in the same core group when we went to school. And so we kind of rebelled a little bit together, and it was nothing like severe. Drink, go to parties, date girls, just what I call normal kid stuff, normal teenage behavior. That's what I mean by rebellion. And then the thing that changed my life, to the trajectory of my life when it comes to being a Jehovah's Witness, was 2 weeks before we graduated from high school. My cousin Richie called me up one night and blew his brains out. I was talking to him on the phone, and it was because of guilt, because we were both rebelling a little bit, and it was because of guilt that he did that. Guilt, shame, remorse. So it gets worse. I hang up the phone, drive to his house, find him. EMS came. They stat flighted him to U of L's trauma center. We got there. He still had a pulse. But here's the kicker for me, was that my family got in a big debate about blood transfusions. So Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in blood transfusions, right?
Right.
So they didn't have a surgeon that would even try to operate on him.
Can't you donate your own blood to, like, you basically recycle your own blood so that if you do?
Yeah, but he had lost, but it's his own. Yes, his own. They can recirculate, but he lost so much blood from shooting himself in the head that he couldn't take it from someone else. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he couldn't get a transfusion, but he had lost so much blood. Now, would he would have died anyway? Yes, but just the very fact that you had all these elders from the church and our family, all there. That dilemma, that trauma, one, of him shooting himself, and then the trauma of dealing with, the debate back and forth,
Right.
It was just like too much, and that was the catalyst for me saying, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I don't care.
Is that what made you walk away?
Yes.
I don't blame you.
Was anyone else in there fighting for him, like trying to get them to do it?
We had some, what they would call, weak members. That's what they called us.
You're considered weak in the eyes of your religion for wanting to save somebody that you love.
Yeah. What I want to point out is this happens all the time in this religion. Okay. This is not unusual. People have had, car wrecks, surgeries, blah, blah, blah. And they've because of the blood transfusion thing, they have died.
Wow.
What is the reason for this? So what is the thing about the blood transfusions?
There's some scriptures that talk about hold on, I'm trying to think of where it's at.
You're good.
Old Testament scriptures, in Deuteronomy, Leviticus, that talk about not consuming blood. And so they feel like if you take a blood transfusion, that's like consuming blood. So, yep.
That's a very skewed interpretation of that, though, because wow. Okay.
What about childbirth? Do they have rules? Do women usually give birth at home?
No, they go to the hospital. They go to the hospital.
They do. Okay.
Yeah. But like you said, if anyone has a complication,
right? God forbid,
especially childbirth,
right?
They are not allowed to take a blood transfusion. And if they do, they will be disfellowshipped, kicked out of the church, and shunned. So I'm out. I've been shunned for 30-some years,
Right.
Because of my. First of all, I was disfellowshipped. Go ahead.
What makes you shunned in the eyes of the church? Can you explain that to those that might not know?
Oh, yeah. So basically, shunning is no one of that religion can speak to you at all. So
the Amish do that a lot, right? When you're shunned from the Amish church. Yeah,
I believe they do the same thing.
Right.
It's so interesting to me because they act like they're this wonderful, accepting, and loving organization, and they truly aren't, not at their core. So shunning basically means not another Jehovah's Witness can have a conversation with you. even if you come to the Kingdom Hall, up until recently, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Even if you came to the Kingdom Hall, they are not allowed to talk to you. Okay, so you're talking about, here's why my cousin killed himself. He was so afraid that any rebellious things that we did when we were in high school, he was so afraid he'd get disfellowshipped and lose his entire family that he chose to take his own life instead of dealing with that.
That has to be a very, very lonely place.
That's why I left. It took me a while. It took me a couple of years before I got the guts to just finally say, look, I'm not doing this shit no more.
Was it a clean breakup, or was it one of those breakups where you kind of go back and forth a little bit?
It was the back and forth. And I got divorced from my first wife. We got married at 18. Okay. So I got divorced from my first wife. I got disfellowshipped for getting divorced. And then I said, screw it. That was a clean break for me. But from the time my cousin died until then, I was like back and forth. But right. I was building this whole different belief system for myself, so that when I did, because I knew eventually I would break away. And so when I got divorced and I was disfellowshipped, I just never went back.
Can we get into relationships a little bit? Because I don't know how much is different, but you talked about dating and stuff like that. Did you end up trying to date girls that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses whenever you were rebelling?
Yeah.
How did that go?
Not good. Being an awkward, oddball Jehovah's Witness, that was kind of tough.
Yeah,
but so and mostly, so the thing about dating with Jehovah's Witnesses, you only date to marry, right? And so there's not this long courtship or whatever. My sister got married when she was like 16. My mom got married when she was 16. So Jehovah's Witnesses tend to get married very young.
So basically saying you want to date someone is like getting engaged almost, because you're just prepping for the marriage.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm guessing that would scare off a girl too who wasn't in the religion.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Also, I'm just genuinely curious. In that religion, when you're dating, are you allowed to hold hands? Are you allowed to be near each other? Are you allowed to kiss?
No. Whoa.
Are you? Can we go over that though?
Marie.
Hold on, right? Hold on. Can you discuss that though? Because a lot of times people don't know these things with some of those religions. Like I think of the Duggars when I think of like.
Yeah, pretty much the Duggar. I mean, so always have to have a chaperone.
Right.
Never alone. Okay. When you're dating, I don't know if it's like that now, but when I was growing up, it was like that. You always had to have a chaperone. You only got to go out in groups of people, so there was always that constant eye on you. And that's pretty much how you dated through, your courtship as being a Jehovah's Witness until you got married. So, yeah, you always had.
And did they have like other people, like other teenagers in the church, like that were maybe a little bit older than you, escorting you on some of these little outings if you would go on a date?
Yeah, so they didn't call it a date,
Yeah.
What would they call it? Out of curiosity, like.
No, I don't remember actually what they called it, but they were very quick to just check that out. When you're looking at someone, they are very good. They were always very good about counseling you. I always got counseled by the elders.
Obviously, no same-sex marriage, no same-sex. Like, how do they feel about people that are gay, lesbian, bisexual? Are they automatically shunned?
So, great question. I don't give a shit what the organization says. They are absolutely 100% against any form of that.
Yeah.
Period. And I don't know how they handle it within the church now, but no, they are not LGBTQ friendly at all. So, so there's another thing, you got, so if you were going to be a Jehovah's Witness, you're going to have to hide that. right?
That's what I was wondering. I was wondering if you had like relations with a same-sex partner or anything, if you would even ever be able to become a Jehovah's Witness. Do they forgive everything to a certain extent whenever you join, or?
I don't know how they handle that within the church because I never saw that growing, in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up
Very
in the
different,
church.
very
So I
different.
never heard of that actually. And I would say that, yeah, your past is forgiven through your relationship with Jesus Christ, but moving forward, they would expect them to not be in a same-sex marriage,
Sure.
or a relationship.
What about like if a girl pops up pregnant, like 15, 16 years old, are they shunned?
Well, they
Yeah.
better check the elders first. Oh, did I say that out loud? My bad.
Ooh,
Yeah,
damn.
I meant what I said. I meant what I
Well,
said because there's a lot of predatory behavior in a kingdom hall, and the organization covers it up all the time. That's probably that's probably the nicest way I can put that. They have this thing called the two witness rule. So let me give you an example. Let's say and this happens. This happens. Okay, and it used to happen quite frequently, where so you're going door to door. Okay, let's give you an example. You're going door to door,
Right.
and a male and a female, go door to door together. Okay, so there is sexual abuse that happens all the time within that organization. And the two witness rule is, let's say a young lady comes to the elders and says she's been sexually abused. Well, they talk to the man, the other individual, the male, and if he says nothing happened and she says something did, that's the only two witnesses. If there wasn't a third witness, then
Wow. I don't like that. That
well, I mean,
is,
they are being sued out the wazoo right now because of that. They just lost a huge case in Montana for child sexual abuse.
really?
because of not believing and taking. Wow.
Right.
Wow.
They do, so all that stuff's kind of starting to come out in the last 10 years of how they hide certain things. And if you're an elder's kid, you can get away with anything.
That's what I was wondering. How much
yeah.
do they try to promote? I mean, I guess not promote that stuff, but how much do the elders kind of encourage, like the young boys go have fun or whatever? It seems sick, but I know that stuff happens.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I've got in trouble with, for drinking and stuff like that with guys in the church, right? And if they were an elder's son, they got off, and I got announced from a platform that I was being a shithead, the week before.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And it happened like that all the time. If you were an elder's kid, so there was like I guess rules for two different people, right? So if you're an elder's kid, you can pretty much get by with anything. If your dad didn't belong to Jehovah's Witness, you get in trouble for everything.
How prevalent is addiction?
I'm glad you asked that because as far as Jehovah's Witnesses are concerned, I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of people struggle that were in that religion. I've gotten messages from people. We've had people on PodTox before, Kyle.
Yeah.
So I have found out, through recovery, that there's many Jehovah's Witnesses who struggle not only with addiction, but also other mental health issues. And so I struggled with addiction for, 25 years. But up until I got sober, I didn't understand the mental aspect of that. So I have borderline personality disorder.
Sure.
As a result of childhood trauma.
Right.
That childhood trauma was how I was raised. And that's something I struggle with till, today. That's something that doesn't go away. and just to think that it's all stemming from childhood, and so I got asked this when I was talking to my therapist. When I first started talking to my therapist, she was like, "Well, how much did your dad's alcoholism affect you?" And I said, it did, but let's talk about the bigger elephant in the room. My mother's religion affected me way more than my dad being an alcoholic. 10 times, 100 times more. Just constantly being under thumb and constantly being controlled and constantly, not being good enough. And then when I left at 23 years old, that was it. Was dead to my entire family, and that has lasting effects because so you feel alone. You feel alone, and it's tough. And so I struggled with anxiety and depression for a long time as well. Since getting sober, clean and sober in 2019, I've worked with a therapist and I've worked through a lot of issues with my sponsor. Just trying, and I understand those things now. I didn't understand those things when I first got sober, how they affected me,
Right.
So, and that's the reason I agree to do the podcast, because if it helps one person, if it helps one individual who has been a part of this religion or is still a part of this religion and they're struggling and they want out, hit me up, because this dealing with this later in life. So I took this hiatus basically mentally and just squashed everything down. Right. And, just did a bunch of drugs to help me feel better about myself because I wanted to change how I felt. And so now I'm dealing with those issues, and I have for the last, 4 or 5 years, just walking through them. And during that walk, I tried to commit suicide a couple of times too, because it just, it's tough.
What happens? Because just like your friend did, well, your cousin did the same thing. What happens when you die? Like, what is the funeral procession? What are the rites that you have? Is it different or is it kind of the same?
It's the same as any other, ceremony would be the same as any other religion. On the outside, it's just what they say, and right. It's different, so all that's the same, pretty much.
And with because I'm trying to understand the Armageddon thing too. So it's basically whenever you pass away, if it's in a way that wouldn't befit the church or whatever, do you fall in that category of like, is there a hell, or is it just everyone's gone?
So they don't believe in hell. So what they believe is that they will be raised from the dead in a paradise condition on earth. Okay. And so my understanding is my cousin won't have that opportunity because he committed suicide.
Right.
So he will just not exist. And that was hard to hear too. That's hard to do. That was hard.
Right. I can't imagine.
Yeah. So it's, the practice of shunning and disfellowshipping is probably the worst part of this religion, because I know of people who have been separated like myself for 30, 40 years from their entire family. And it takes a mental toll on people,
Can you explain what's changed and what changed for you now that family got back in contact with you?
About 6 months ago, they started changing some of their rules, guidelines. Simple things at first. It was that men can wear beards now, that you don't have to wear a tie to the Kingdom Hall. Women can wear slacks now. Ooh. It was small things like that. They started making these weird changes, and they were back to back to back to back. It was just a few months ago. And so, and I keep up with stuff sometimes, I check in and see what their, things have changed or whatever.
Right.
Then they hit with the big one, and it was So they changed their rules on disfellowshipping people that are disfellowshipped. So before 6 months ago, if you're disfellowshipped and you went to a Kingdom Hall, no one could speak to you. No one can speak to you outside the Kingdom Hall. But you're free to come to the Kingdom Hall if you're disfellowshipped. But nobody's going to talk to you, right? Well, now they changed that rule. That if a disfellowshipped person comes to the Kingdom Hall, you can give them a simple greeting. Oh, whatever that means. So
Right.
you can talk to them, right? And you can invite them. So they went into this thing. So they had the memorial of Jesus' death, right? We call it Easter. They call it, okay. So the big push was to ask, invite all these disfellowship people to the memorial of Christ's death, right? So I get this, I'm like, what the? I get a phone. I didn't know anything about it, actually. That's the part I missed. And I had a phone call from my mom. And that was just, it's like being disfellowshipped twice, honestly, because do you really expect me to come back to all the shit that you all put me through and you want me to come back? And the other thing, this is what makes me mad, is like, if the organization could have changed it now, why couldn't they change it fucking way back then?
Right.
Right? I mean,
Toxic doesn't recognize toxic.
I know. And, she's shocked that I was like, no.
Right. Run, my friend,
My
run.
sister called me. Then I had, a cousin call me. I mean, like, inviting me to this memorial. And for the first time in my life, I was like, you know what? I've been silent for 30 years. I had never tried to push a relationship with me onto my mother or my sister or anyone else in my family. Never. I respected their space, respected what they believed, let them do their thing. But that one was too much. And so I talked to my sister. I said, I have not bothered you all. I have not. Please don't call me again. Don't ever call me again. If it's about going to a Kingdom Hall or attending anything like that, it's like, and then she was like, I don't understand. I said, I want you to understand this, like being disfellowshipped again, because you're saying, hey, if you come to Kingdom Hall, I can talk to you. Well, I'm not coming to a fucking Kingdom Hall. So why don't you just talk to me now?
Right.
Because it's not going to happen, That's where I finally kind of told one of them off. Basically, like, did you realize how much this doesn't make any sense? Like, just change my rules.
Have things like therapy really been helpful for your trauma?
I would not be alive today without therapy. I would have taken my life. I don't know how in depth to get about that, but yes, I would have ended it because I just couldn't live with everything. All the trauma from that, and all the trauma from, I caused my own trauma, from being an alcoholic and addict for 25 years. I destroyed my family.
I want to try and get into some of the random things because there's so many things that have popped in my head throughout this, and I wanted to keep things going. If someone's disfellowed, can they get back in? Does it would it depend on what actually happened? Because I'm guessing some things you would never be accepted back, but
yes, you can get back in. How do you get back in? You continue to go to the Kingdom Hall meetings, right? You write the elders a letter and tell them that you want, that you want to be forgiven. You want back into the congregation. You want to be a part of the congregation. And probably what generally happens is that over about a 6 month to 8 month time frame, if you come to every meeting, they'll reinstate you.
Okay.
So they want to see how repentant you are. So can you imagine like going for 6 to 8 months, no one speaking to you, no one saying anything to you, and just so you rely. It's not forgiveness from God.
It's from them. Yeah.
It's from them. And that's what's so crazy about it, is like
like with your whole story with your cousin, this is one thing that's really standing out to me. How did his parents feel? Because like their son wasn't able to be saved because of the church. Like they didn't carry a resentment, or that would make a resentment for me.
My uncle, very faithful Jehovah's Witness. My aunt drank herself to death 3 years later.
Wow.
So that's how they handled it.
Right.
So my uncle was like, he was faithful, da 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 da, you know. But my aunt, she stayed in her room for 3 years, and all she did was drink, and so she drank herself completely to death.
How does somebody become an elder?
Wow. I guess from what I've seen and from my understanding, it's just a lifetime of like a long time of being a faithful servant, going out door to door, teaching Bible studies, being a good public speaker, those things over a long period of time. And then elders are chosen within the elder ranks.
That's
right. So, because they're all about, it's really funny because, everything's about, really to me, it's about everything in that hierarchy is about whose ass you kiss. You kiss ass long enough, you'll be an elder.
Right.
And that's kind of what I wondered, because a lot of these can turn into almost just singular, I don't know, just shitty place. Just because if you have a couple elders that are maybe doing the wrong thing, and they're very big on corporal punishment, all types of stuff, depending on what's going on, they're only going to bring in more people like them, and it's just going to turn into a mass chaos over time, and everyone's going to be under a thumb.
So let me ask you all a question. You're right on that regard. And what if you're the elder? What if you have a couple of elders that are pedophiles?
That's what I wondered.
Exactly my point.
Right.
And it is rampant in this religion, and they like to downplay it and shit. But I'm telling you, it is rampant in the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses, because it's my word against yours.
In the rule of two, they can get away with it.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. That's why they're being sued like crazy. So I'm going to add one more thing. They lost their tax status in Norway recently, and they lost their tax status because of disfellowshipping and shunning. So that is actually why they changed their disfellowshipping techniques a little bit, to make it seem more
gotcha.
Because there's other countries that have watched that.
Wow.
Seen what Norway did. So they pulled their tax exempt status because they called it psychological torture. And it is. It truly is. And so there's other countries that are looking at that going, wait a minute. So that's why they started changing their rules.
So when they say it's like because I've always heard the religion being described as like a cult.
Yeah.
And so what makes a cult? I mean, do they recognize that they're cultish? Do they think that's a superpower? Like,
the organization has what they call a governing body. Okay. I can't remember the number. I think it's 8 leaders who were chosen by God, and they call them the faithful and discreet slave. They say it all the time, and it's because they think they were hand chosen by Jehovah to lead the organization. Okay, and so they try to downplay the fact that it's a cult, that everybody thinks it's a cult, because it's not one person. Well, it's 8.
Right.
And so, but they make all the rules, regulations, guidelines for every Jehovah's Witness worldwide. If they told that, if the governing body came out and said, I want you all to stand on your head for the next, week, every faithful Jehovah's Witness would stand on their head for a week.
wow.
They would not question, because you're not allowed to question them. And that's where, I differed as a teenager growing up. I questioned everything, and that's why I got in trouble so much. Because I questioned everything. Perfect example. I got into an argument with 2 elders on a Sunday. You know, it was over 144,000. Jehovah's Witnesses believe only 144,000 people go to heaven. Okay, they take the scripture out. It's in Revelation, but in the context of that scripture, it says, "Out of each nation of each tribe of Israel." And I said, I don't know a Jewish Jehovah's Witness. Okay, so this scripture, your all's interpretation, doesn't make any sense to me. I was like 16 years old. And it's like, this is talking about the Jewish nation. It's not even talking about you all. It's not even talking about us. It's talking about the nation, you know, the nation of Israel. That's what it's talking about. It's not even talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. We're Gentiles.
Right.
You know? We were saved through Christ, right? So we didn't have this relationship with God, right? And yeah, I got a bunch of trouble for that. But, you know, the way they addressed me, I knew then. Like I had a typical 15-year-old kid question.
Right.
And the way they handled it was to demean me, put me down.
Is there any, like, I guess, religious protection from government? Does that make sense? Like if a higher member ended up getting in trouble for something, but it's accepted under Jehovah's Witness rule, are they still going to get in trouble the same way?
Wow, you know, I don't know, but that's a great question. I can't answer that. I know recently there's been a lot of cases that have gone to court for elders who have sexually abused children
right
within the organization. And so I think that if they are found guilty, they are disfellowshipped.
Okay. Okay.
But they will defend them like crazy in court.
Right.
Right. And that's where they're having so many problems with this two witness rule. Their rank and file have diminished over the years significantly because of the sexual abuse allegations and the way they treat people who were Jehovah's Witnesses that are not Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. And so you've seen a decline in Jehovah's Witnesses as a whole because of things like that. Internet has helped. The internet age has helped because you can get online and find out anything you want about Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses have made predictions of the end of the world 7 or 8 times. They never came true, you know. So it's easy if you want to learn on your own about Jehovah's Witnesses and what their belief system is, it's right there at your fingertips, you know. And so how they combat it is that the governing body will come out with new Watchtowers, New Awake magazines. That's their publications, as they make every month. And every talk, there'll be something in it about not listening to what they call apostate teachings. So anybody that questions Jehovah's organization, don't listen to them. And so they beat that into their followers. They beat it into them. Even when I was a kid, it was bad. You know, you couldn't question Jehovah's organization. You know, these are 8 dudes just like me.
Do you have to give a certain amount of money to like tithing in that church, like a certain percentage of your income?
Yeah, you're expected to at least 10%. Of course.
At least 10%.
So there's a lot of money involved there too. You know?
Right.
So
follow the money.
Yeah. So they have done these things in the last several months to try to change their image, you know. So males couldn't have facial hair.
Right.
Women had to wear dresses all the time. Couldn't wear slacks. Men had to basically wear a 3-piece suit. They changed all those things to try to humanize or make them look more hip. Okay. And then the last thing they changed was this fellowshipping thing of like, you can say a greeting to them if they come to the keynote. Ooh, thank you. You know, I was like, after 30 years, you can say hi to me. Get the fuck out of here.
Right.
After you've said all of this and after hearing so many different things, you started this off basically saying that Jehovah's Witnesses were similar to Christians. the similarities, especially with like sexual allegations and all that too. It's kind of there in a lot of ways. And I'm not, crapping on Christians or anything at all. It's just, I feel like this is a wide scale religious problem that the leaders have had so much control over everything and their followers and all of it, regardless of the religion. It's kind of got a little out of hand. Of course, with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's a little bit more than that, but still, it's crazy how widespread this is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that point because you see it every day.
Yeah.
It's shocking that you have so many people who are predators within all religions, but if you look at Christianity as a whole, in the last 10, 15 years, man, you've really seen a lot of that stuff coming out, and Jehovah's Witnesses are no different. Actually, they're such a small organization to actually, worldwide to actually have the problems they have. If you look at it, if you compare that to other religions, they're tiny compared to other religions.
Right.
So to have that much, sexual abuse allegations within that religion is huge. Maria, did you have something?
Now that you have your freedom to join whichever religion that you choose, are you spiritual? Are you religious? Or do you run from it because of trauma?
So that's what I struggled with the most when I got sober.
That was what I was going to ask. Like during your recovery, like how has that worked out for you? Like,
it's okay to believe in a higher power and not know what that higher power is.
right.
Yeah, I'm very spiritual in nature. I think for me, I pick there's several things that I identify with that are spiritual in nature. I do identify that I believe in God. I believe that in Jesus Christ, but I also believe other things too.
Same.
I've gotten bits and pieces from other religions that I like too. When I was going through rehab, the Buddhist meditations helped me so much, man. I could not tell you how much it helped me, man. And just so I'm an eclectic spiritual person.
Allowed you to be polytheistic, basically.
Yes.
So what has helped you?
I support, right? Spiritually speaking, whatever works for you, I support 100%, just like recovery.
Right.
Whatever works for you in recovery, I'm going to support it 100%, and I don't give a shit. I go to
Absolutely.
I go to AA. It helps me. But man,
And you and I have talked about this before, about how, the stigma against MAT with AA almost killed you. Like,
Yeah.
we've had this discussion several times.
Because it brought you right back to that place where you were ostracized. I'm
Right,
sure.
where you,
Yeah.
there you go.
growing up the way I did, I know that ostracism costs people lives.
100%.
Okay? Period. Okay, so I don't care what your recovery looks like, what your life looks like, who you worship, who you don't worship. I'm going to support you 100% because I have been ostracized my entire fucking life. And I will never do that to anyone, especially in recovery.
That's what I wondered kind of is if your addiction kind of caught on and continued just because you were so used to being ostracized.
Yeah.
Addiction, I mean, if you're an addict, society's ostracizing you. So it's you just kind of continued in that cycle until you finally escaped it. And I could see you getting comfortable in that cycle.
I got so comfortable in it because, I was already different. I was already ostracized. Doing drugs didn't bother me at all because who cares? I'm already ostracized, Marie.
What has helped you the most with your self-love journey during your recovery?
Wow.
Because I know people that have childhood trauma have people that have a lot of trauma have a lot of self-hatred towards themselves.
You know what? I still struggle with that. I'm better than I used to be, I still struggle with it mightily.
What has made you better, though?
Helping other people.
I love that.
There you go.
Filling up, that's what fills your cup.
Being able to help. Just being able to help someone else not feel the way I felt.
I get it.
It's a good feeling though too whenever you do get someone through, you know, whatever, because I mean all of us here have done it. We've at least had a couple people that we've helped get through addiction or just some sort of struggle, and whenever you know that they are doing better, that dude, it's a damn good feeling.
Yeah, and that's as simply as I can put it, is that what helps me with that hatred for myself is that being able to speak out, being able to, if today helps one person, we've all three been blessed, right?
Brian, you're doing more than just helping one person. I just want to let you know that.
That's why I do what I do. I get up every day and, I try to help at least one person. Because it's hard to get over self-hatred. It is. It really
right.
is. And I, like yourself, I struggle with it. My mental health issues contribute to me struggling with that. And but I know that I have a bigger purpose. I know that I'm not a piece of shit. I know that even though my family doesn't talk to me or want anything to do with me, I know I can help someone else. I know that I'm a good person, like I'm convinced I'm a decent person now.
You are.
So the days that I struggle with it, I step back and go, maybe I just need to help somebody.
Since you and I connected last year, around this time last year, you have always been one of those people that when I have different things going on, or if I post a video about A, B, C, and D, you're always in my inbox checking on me.
Yeah.
Because you have a huge heart. And for that, I have so much love and respect for you. I truly do. You've helped me tremendously.
We made the connection, like you said a year ago. And, I know, like, I think for me, I see what maybe not everybody sees. Like when you post a video or something, I know if you mention something about the kids or the struggle of being a single mom and all that, I know in the back of my mind that I need to, hey, to check on her real quick.
Right. And that just goes to show what a good person you are, because I've always respected that, and you've always been so respectful too. Like, just in embracing everyone's own unique recovery journey. You've always been very vocal about leaving no one out.
I've told my story a million times on addiction and alcoholism. Now I get into, I was born and raised, but never to the depth that we got into today. And I was nervous, totally nervous, freaking out about it because I knew it would be more in depth, but I wanted it to be because it's going to help somebody.
I think it was really good just to learn about this stuff, even from a standard of people who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, because you got to understand too, whenever those people are coming to your door, like, I don't know, I could see, because it's almost like a salesman role, right? And whenever you're a salesman, you hear no all the time, and it can get to you. It's probably the same thing doing that stuff, where over time you just hear no so damn much. Right. And a little common courtesy could go a long way, I think.
It was totally frustrating to get to go through all that and go door to door. Everybody's telling you no, or everybody's telling you get the fuck off their porch. And I mean, people let their dogs out on you. And it's stuff like that. It is discouraging. But you're doing that all for works,
right?
So that you can achieve this goal that that the organization has set for you.
We can call it at that. I think everything was great. We covered just about everything we wanted to.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.
Bye.